All right, everybody, welcome to our another edition of Southeastern Sports Network podcast, talking all things Lions. Exciting time of year. Robbie Rhodes with you here, along with Voice of the Lions, Mark Willoughby. Mark, glad to have you tonight here as we're just kind of talking about where we stand. We're talking football tonight. Really, we're hitting this quick with football. Where we stand when it comes to playoffs. We'll talk River Bell real quick, but a lot of moving parts right now when it comes to Southeastern football in the future.
Yeah, I know it's been a while since we've been on, but a lot happening, especially since the last time we were with you. Southeastern's gotten on a roll here late down the stretch, and they've played very, very well during conference play, and a lot of exciting things hopefully on the horizon. We don't know how the finale is going to turn out or what's going to happen with the playoffs, but we're going to set the stage for you with all the scenarios and tell you exactly where Southeastern stands right now today and what needs to happen next week. And there's still a lot to play for here coming up, not only the River Bell, but, potential playoffs on the line.
Yeah, I think that, look, I mean, we're going to talk about playoffs, River Bell, but look, I'll say this, and this may be negative. I know I got that tagline sometimes, but look, if you win the River Bell on Thursday night and you finish 7-5 and you don't make the playoffs, this was a very successful season, considering what you were up against in terms of schedule, where you stood after the first 5 weeks to rally in a league that's better. I mean, the Southland is not where it was, I'd say, 10, 12 years ago, Mark, in terms of its strength from top to bottom. But it's way better than it's been in the last 4 or 5 years in terms of depth. Teams that can, play better on any given Saturday. And so you've beaten some really good teams along the way, solid teams, tough games on the road. And so no matter what happens, I think Coach Selfo and his staff have a lot to build on in the offseason recruiting. So we'll talk about all the playoff stuff, but I just wanted to say that I think this is, no matter what happens, where you were and what you were up against coming into the 2024 season, it's an impressive thing they've done.
No question where this team was sitting 1-4. And I agree with you, Robbie. And I know we haven't been on here in a while, but I echo everything you're saying. This has been a tremendous coaching job by Frank Selfo and his staff, all things considered. Considering where this team was, you got to realize the portal is a real thing now. And when you lose players to the portal, and it's not easy to always replace them, especially if you're not set up in that environment yet, which I think Southeastern will be moving forward. But, coming out of last year, you had some portal losses and a Bauer Sharp and, a couple other guys leave your program. You had some other defections and you lost some good players. And all of a sudden, here you are with, trying to, rebound after a 3-8 season. You got a new quarterback, a quarterback back, but you're still a new offensive coordinator, I should say. And you're facing a schedule that's unreal. I mean, you got 2 FBS out of the chute, Tulane, who's a top 20 ranked team. Got a chance.
Maybe the best group of 5 team in the country.
Potentially, yeah. They got an outside shot at getting into the playoffs. And, of course, Southern Miss is Southern Miss, regardless. And the fact that we played them early when they still had some fight in them. And then you have South Dakota State, the number 1 team in the country at the time, the 2-time defending national champion, who's got a chance to get back to the finals. You have a very good Eastern Washington team who's got a chance to finish strong down the stretch. Dynamic offense, and then Tarleton State on the road. That's your non-conference schedule before you even get into conference. And this team is 1-4 during that stretch. Last year, they're 0-5. So that's headway right there. Then you get into the league and you basically go on a run and you miss a 58-yard field goal about a foot to the left, or else you're talking about the playoffs already and being conference champions. River Bell, right. Notwithstanding. So where this team is right now to where it was, certainly one of the best coaching jobs Frank Selfo has done in his tenure here, and he's a 2-time coach of the year.
Marcos, talk playoffs. Watched some things happen yesterday that went in the Lions' favor, some things that didn't, and so at the end of the day, you've got to win Thursday night or it's all for nothing, 6-6 does nothing for you. 7-5 gives you at least a shot at this thing. I know we've talked a little bit, and you try to equate 2019 when the Lions got in. I think when they got in 2021, there was no question they were going to get in with how Cole Kelly had played. They were 8-3. They didn't win the league, but 8-3 was they were definitely in. You look back at 2019, they get in at 7-4. I think the committee, they lost the Bethune game. I think the committee looked at the Bethune game that year and said, look, we figured they would have won that game. They were better than them. They played well enough. It wasn't the road. They thought the Lions would have won that game if played. So they kind of gave you that 8-4 thought process. So you look at 19, you look at 16, the Lions finished 7-4 in an 11-game season. You kind of thought after you left Nichols that, maybe this team would have a chance again, and they really weren't close. So where we sit today, I think we're kind of a fair distance away from where we sat going into the Riverbell game in 2019 in the committee's eyes. But I do think we're well ahead of where we were in 2016. We're just right in the middle, and so
I think that's. I'm sorry to cut you off. No, I think that's a fair way to put it. I think we're ahead of 2016, and quite frankly, 2016, it was an 11-game schedule that year. Southeastern opens with Oklahoma State, lose 61-7 or whatever it was. Go to Southern Utah, which was a non-conference battle against the Big Sky, and a return trip from 2014, 2 years later. And it's a game you're leading much of the first half, and then you're playing in 8,000 feet altitude, and you lose in the second half, 28-23. And no, at the time, could that be the game that keeps you out of the playoffs? And as it turned out, it was. Then you come back and you kind of get hot. You get into your conference schedule. You play pretty well, but you lose to Central Arkansas badly at home. And Central Arkansas was a ranked team, so that was a bad look because you got a chance to get the conference championship on the line, and you can't win that game. And it escapes me the other loss, but you end up 7-4. But you're 6-4 going into Nichols. Lamar, that's right. A bad loss at Lamar. Lamar wasn't even in the playoffs, so that your strength of schedule was nowhere close to what it is this year with your non-conference slate, because back then you had to play a ton of conference games. We didn't have a chance to schedule Tarleton, didn't have a good chance to schedule Eastern Washington, South Dakota State, plus 2 FBS teams. So the non-conference schedule, and I think that because of that year and years like that since then, is a reason the conference has made a point to go out and schedule tough non-conference teams. That's why the Southland, you've seen it elevate this year. But certainly 2016, we thought at the time maybe a little bit closer to getting in, but when the bracket was announced, we weren't even the first 4 out.
Right.
So at 7-4. So now you fast forward to this year, and you a little bit gun shy going back to that year, but then there's 2019 in there, but we're probably not in as good a shape as 2019. So, we don't want to sugarcoat this. We want to be honest with what we see and kind of what we read and what we hear. And look, we have no inside sources. We know what everybody else knows. We can look at the records. We can look at the conference breakdowns and who has the auto bids, who has the better record.
The big difference in 19 and this year, and I think if the Lions are left out, this will be the reason why, is in 2019 you went on the road and absolutely embarrassed the number 6 team in the country in Central Arkansas. So I think it was 31-0, and then
34-0.
I know 34-0. And then the opening game, I know they didn't finish their season the way they wanted to. I think they went 7-5, 6-6. But at the time, Jacksonville State was ranked top 5 in the country, I believe, Mark. And you just embarrassed them in Strawberry Stand over here. So you had these 2 really, really strong wins. And right now, the Lions don't have a single strong win against a ranked team.
Correct. Jacksonville State, I think, was ranked 6th coming in.
Yeah, they were definitely.
They finished with a losing record, actually. They had some injuries after they played us.
But at the time, they were right there.
When they were coming off a semifinal appearance or whatever it was the year before, and they were loaded offensively. So that was a big win at the time. And as a matter of fact, we kind of sent them hurtling toward a bad year. And then you go into UCA, which is a team that had our number for the most part over the years since we've been in the league. And you got Cole Kelly going there with him and Chase and Virgil, and we thump them 34-0. So those are 2 big wins. You had a huge win over Abilene Christian, I think, on the road as well. So you had some blowouts in there. You had the tough loss, 6 turnover, 13 penalty loss against UIW on homecoming. And you lose to Ole Miss, but it was a competitive Ole Miss game. SEC games, 40-20, 1-score game late in the in the fourth quarter. And so there was a lot that got you in over the hump. Now, fast forward to this year, this team, as we'll talk about it, the non-conference schedule is brutal. You play 2 FBS, a ranked Tulane team. We talked about Southern Miss. You come home, play Eastern Washington, who beat you last year, and they're traditionally a power, but they're a Big Sky team with an explosive offense. You get that win, which is probably the signature feather in this team's cap this year, as far as a non-con, from a national perspective.
Yeah, but they're still going to finish 5-7, right, Mark?
Yeah, well, they got a chance to. And matter of fact, if they finish 5-7, that's going to help us, because that would be against Northern Arizona, which right now sits 8-3 with a non-Division I win, and really no good wins in the Big Sky. And they're kind of in that bubble too. We'll talk about them in a minute, but they also played UIW and were blown out by UIW. So now if they play Eastern Washington and Eastern Washington go into Flagstaff and get a win, Southeastern would be 1-1 against the common opponents. They would be 0-2. So that's the hope, to separate you from Northern Arizona.
Yeah. Northern Arizona, if they get in at 9-3, they're going to get in as a Big Sky, huh?
Well, they're not going to be. The thing is, that the best they can do is have 7 Division I wins. And if they lose, then they would have fewer. And obviously, they would have 6 Division I wins. I think they're out if they lose.
Oh, they're 8-3. Are they 8-3 now, or are they 7? No,
they're 8-3 right now with a non-Division I win. 7. I got to look up their record. I think the best they can finish is 8-4.
Okay, so they're 7-4 right now.
Correct.
With a non-D1 win.
I got to look it up. I'll tell you here in just a second. Give me a chance. Who are we looking at? Northern
Arizona.
Arizona. Okay, they're 7-4. Correct. 7-4. So they have 6 Division I wins. They can get to 7. They have an FBS loss, a close one, Arizona, which was 22-10, but they haven't beaten a team with a 500 record. And so they may not beat it. Now, matter of fact, I don't think anybody can get to 500 on their schedule. So that's going to ding them a little bit. They did not play Montana State. They did not play UC Davis, the top 2 teams in the Big Sky. The only top teams in the Big Sky they did play was Montana, 11-point loss, and they had a close loss to Idaho, who was playing without their quarterback. So they played teams 3 and 4 in their league, didn't beat any of them, and the teams they beat were all below Eastern Washington as it stands right now. So
definitely a team to watch. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but that's just one bubble team, and that may not be the one. I'm just bringing
Abilene gets a big win this past weekend.
An auto bid.
Yeah, they're in. They're going to get the auto bid. So you look at who else. Tarleton, I do think that if they finish 8-4, they get in over us. Just because
they got a win over us, yeah.
So they're in. I think the Southern Utah game where they beat UCA on the road was a hurtful situation for Southeastern. You think they're going to beat Utah Tech at home this weekend, which would get them to 8-4, Mark.
I mean, it's a rivalry. Anything can happen, but I just
anything can happen.
think Utah Tech's got enough juice to.
Yeah.
It's not a far trip at all for them, but
no.
I just don't think they're going to have enough to beat them. And Southern Utah, they're pretty good. I've watched them. I think they're a team that kind of remind me a little bit of us, actually. Blue collar, physical, can really run the football. They've been in every game. They had a couple of injuries early, which hurt them, and they've rebounded, had a great close to the season. And, they lost to Tarleton in overtime. That ball game was at home, but still, that's a team that's really played well and have earned it down the stretch. So they're on the bubble too, but they got a chance to finish 7-5, but they have an FBS win. So that's going to really propel them in the eyes of a committee. Anytime you get an FBS win, it's going to stand out regardless of who it is against.
And I think that no matter what we think about the teams, the committees, it's just a national perspective that the Big Sky is just going to be a Big Sky team is always going to get the favor more so than a Southland team. It's just kind of the way it is right now.
It is, but Southern Utah now is in the UAC. They're not in the Big Sky.
You're right. Forgive me.
They're with Tarleton. So right now they're looking at possibly being a third, or actually a fourth team in, because Eastern Kentucky right now, as it stands, would be in if they win. Eastern Kentucky, similar situation. They've got off to a tough start, rebounded, went into Tarleton, got a 17-13 win at Tarleton, and since then they've have found a way to win, and they're sitting here 7-4. So if they
big comeback against Austin Peay this past weekend,
a huge comeback. Austin Peay blew 2 weeks in a row, lost to Abilene Christian and Eastern Kentucky with big first half leads. Weren't able.
Both games affected us. Yeah, correct. Both games affected us.
Exactly.
Who does
the United's looking at maybe 4 possibly?
Yeah, which is amazing. Who does Eastern Kentucky have this weekend?
They have. I'll tell you here in a second. Eastern Kentucky has, I think it's North Alabama, if I'm not mistaken. And North Alabama is a team that's capable. I don't think that's a foregone conclusion. As we check it, North Alabama goes to Richmond, Kentucky this week. So, you got to think Eastern Kentucky is going to be favored in that ball game. But North Alabama is a team that has snuck up on some people this year, and they're athletic, and you never know. Anything can happen.
Yeah, you never know.
But if they win, I think they're in.
Yeah. Which, I think there's about 29, and New Hampshire, another team that had a big win this past weekend. Rhode Island comes from behind. Rhode Island's actually, I saw it today, I was reading Sam Herder. Rhode Island's actually a team that has a chance to get a national seed, possibly.
Well, let's talk about the Colonial or Coastal, I think they're calling it now, because I think they've changed the designation. Still CAA, but I think they went from Colonial to Coastal or whatever because, a lot of the original Colonials left that league. But regardless, that is a 16-team league as we take a look at it here. I'll pull that up on my end. The Colonials is a 16-team league that the top teams in that league don't play everybody. So a lot of times what will happen in a big league like that, we saw it in the Southland at some degree a few years ago, you're going to stack up some wins because if you play a lot of conference games, you're going to play a lot of teams on the bottom. So right now, as we look at it, the Colonial with 16 teams, I'll read them out to you. Richmond is 9-2 overall. Delaware is 9-1, although they're ineligible because of their move up to FBS. Rhode Island's 9-2. Villanova's 8-3. New Hampshire 7-3. Stony Brook's 8-3, and William and Mary's 7-4. And then you got Towson at 6-5. So basically, you've got a top half and a bottom half. So everybody's playing everybody and beating each other up. But if you look at, I think we're talking about Rhode Island. If you look at their schedule, they played Campbell, they played Hampton, Maine, New Hampshire, Monmouth, did play Delaware, Albany, and Bryant. That's their schedule. So they didn't play Villanova, didn't play Richmond. They've avoided a lot of the top teams in the league, and yet they got a chance to get a seed. And honestly, their schedule strength is not as good as ours. But yet, how would you like to play that schedule? If you're Southeastern. So Rhode Island kind of being propped up by playing in a really a big, weak league. Although there's some good teams in that league, probably you can cut off the top third and top third down. Those teams are, not great.
Yeah. Villanova had a tough loss this past weekend. They're sitting at 8-3. I believe you said 8-3 or 7-4.
Villanova's 8-3. So let's look at Villanova real quick. So Villanova, taking a look at their schedule, they have a win over Colgate, a 1-point win over Towson, who's middle level CAA, lost to Maryland, 2-touchdown win over Long Island, which is a Northeast Conference team. Did beat Stony Brook, who's in the upper half of the Colonial. Got blown out at Maine, 35-7. Squeaked by New Hampshire close win over Hampton. Beat in North Carolina A&T. Monmouth beat them this week 40-33, and they got to play Delaware. Although they've dominated Delaware over the past few years, Delaware more scholarships now moving up to FBS. If Delaware can go in there and get a win, they're 8-4 with not what I would call a very impressive resume to be 8-4, but they're 8-4.
If they lose to Delaware, they could be out.
I don't think they're going to be out. I think they're still in because it's Villanova. I mean, plus you got to keep there's got to be some regional balance in this.
Yeah.
So the Colonial's always going to get deference, but again, let them play our schedule, let us play their schedule, and see what happens.
Who's going to be anybody? Is the Ohio Valley a 1 or 2 team league this year?
Well, that's the other thing we got to look at, because that's going to affect Southeastern. Obviously, SEMO right now has the leg up for the auto bid, but they play Tennessee State, who's 7-3 or 7-4. If Tennessee State goes in there and wins, Tennessee State's going to get the auto bid. If they get the auto bid, SEMO is going to definitely get a number 2 spot in the OVC.
Oh, that could really hurt us.
Right. So Tennessee State, if they lose to SEMO, probably out because their strength of schedule is not that good otherwise. So they would probably be on the outside, the outside looking in. Then you've got Tennessee Martin, who was probably in before yesterday, and then they lost to Tennessee Tech at home 10-9. So now Tennessee Martin has to win just to be on the bubble. But they have a chance. Tennessee Martin, if they win, they could possibly put themselves in. But the OVC could be anywhere from 1 to 3 teams. Is kind of how it looks. So if they get more than,
I feel like if Tennessee Tech goes in there and wins, Mark, or Tennessee State, that could really hurt us.
I would almost tell you, if Tennessee State beats SEMO, it's going to be really tough for us unless the committee really values what we've done. And that's the one thing we don't know. I mean, we're sitting here guessing at it, but we have no idea, because they're going to use a lot of factors. It's going to be more than just computer rankings. It's going to be more than how the polls have them, more than what all these bracketologists come out with. They don't really know. The committee's in there. They watch the tape. They're doing the eye test, comparing apples to apples, apples to oranges, oranges to grapes, trying to compare conferences, who played who when, who's playing well down the stretch, and just who is going to be the best team to represent in the playoffs. And it could be as simple as, they got 8 wins. This team has 6, or this team has 7. We're going to take the team with 8. Could be that simple. Or they could say, you know what, this 7-win team is better than this 8-win team. They've got a better resume. They deserve to be in over this team. It happened to us in 2016 when Illinois State got in at 6-5. They only had 6 wins and 5 losses, 4 or 5 FCS losses. So they got in, and actually Illinois State, I should say, and got in and actually made a run. They went to Central Arkansas and beat them that year. And so the committee, you have to say they were right, because Central Arkansas blew us out. Illinois State goes into Central Arkansas and wins. So, there could be that situation come about. But again, Illinois State was buoyed by a really strong Missouri Valley. Okay, and that kind of comes up with some of the things, you read online, you get on the AGS board, which if you've never been on anygivensaturday.com, if you want to know anything about FCS, get on there and read it, because it's probably every FCS guru in the country gets on there and posts. And you got some really good bracketologists on there that go through everything with a fine-tooth comb and their objective and do a pretty good job. Yeah, they do a really good job. They have their own poll, and so they have a pretty good pulse on the FCS subdivision. But I lost my train of thought. But it's there's a lot of factors that go into the committee and how they choose teams, and right now Southeastern's got a chance, I think, but some dominoes have to fall still, I think. And we'll talk about it in concrete terms here in a second.
Well, as you look at the Missouri Valley, Mark, that's always a free kind of a. Yeah.
I know what I was going to say. I'll back up. Saw a comment about, let's say, Northern Arizona and the Big Sky. And this is not to disparage Northern Arizona. It's a great program and having a good year. Have a chance to finish 8-4. But the comment I saw was, well, they're in the Big Sky and it's a much stronger conference in the Southland. And my comment is this. Maybe overall, but they didn't play everybody in the Big Sky. They didn't play the the two best teams in the Big Sky, basically they played everybody from 4 down or 3 down.
Right.
Did not beat teams 3 or 4, and all their wins are lower than a team we've already beaten in the Big Sky. So if you're trying to compare resumes, I mean, we have a better resume. So I don't think the Big Sky props them up that much. I don't think you could just gift them an at-large bid based on they're in the Big Sky. I think you have to compare. If you're going to compare it to another 7-3, which is what it's going to come down to, 2 teams that are 7-3 versus the FCS. Even though they'll have an 8th win on paper, it's against the, Lincoln, whatever. It's not even really a school, so it's not NCAA.
Missouri Valley, 5 or 6 teams, Mark?
Probably 4. It's going to be 4 because
that's low for them. That's low for them.
Actually, it has. Well, they've been down as low as 3 before, but they beat each other up. That's the problem with the Missouri Valley. I mean, that's kind of a hatchet league, so to speak. But it's similar to the Big Sky. It's top heavy. It really is, because Houston Christian beat Indiana State. Indiana State's 3-4, right in the middle of the Missouri Valley. They sit right in the middle, 3-4, and Houston Christian went to Indiana State and won. So that kind of tells you, what the bottom of that league is like. Although Southern Illinois is at the bottom, and they have a win over UIW, but that was before they had a ton of injuries, which basically decimated their season. What's that?
So Mark, what do you say here? 24 spots.
Okay, Missouri State's ineligible. Yeah, they're 8-3, so take them out. So that they're ineligible. They would be the 5th. You've got North Dakota State, South Dakota, Illinois State are in. And that's it. Nobody else can get in because everybody else has 7, 8, 6, 8, 9, 10 losses.
There's probably 28 to 30 teams that are in the playoff mix. 10 of them are probably on the bubble, I would say.
Well, I'm going to tell you what they are right here. Here, this is going to be your auto bids, most likely. Montana State, probably SEMO or Tennessee State. It's going to be one of those 2. Likely Richmond. Now, it could be Rhode Island, could be one of those. But let's just say it's Richmond for right now because they're going to
let's just give one team.
It's going to be one. All right. North Dakota State's an auto bid. Duquesne, either Lehigh or Holy Cross. That's going to depend on this weekend. Drake out of the Pioneer, Mercer out of the SoCon, UIW has wrapped it up in ACU. That's your 10 auto bids. There's going to be 14 at large. Right now, I would tell you Rhode Island's in. I don't think they could lose and are still in. South Dakota State can lose and they're still in. South Dakota can lose. They're still in. I think Tarleton's still in if they lose. I think that's the only lock at large bids, in my opinion.
Oh, wow.
Now, I think SEMO's a lock if they lose to Tennessee State. So
right. Let's just say they lose. Let's just say they lose and make them a 5th. It's 15 teams, Mark, right now? So
that would put it at 15. That's right. That would put you at 15 if SEMO loses. All right. This next group that I'm going to read, I would tell you if they win, they're probably in. Stony Brook, New Hampshire, Illinois State, Eastern Kentucky. Of course, I have Tennessee State in there, but we'll say we're already gifting them the win. William and Mary, UT Martin. I think if those teams win, they're in. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's 6. So it's 15 plus 6. So now we're looking at 3.
3 spots left.
3 spots left. If Southern Utah wins, I think they're in. So I think that's down to 2. So it's going to be down to us, Northern Arizona, probably Western Carolina and Chattanooga, because I find it hard to believe the SoCon's only going to get 1. Now, right now, that's kind of how it stands. But depending on how that plays out, and there may be one in here I'm leaving out.
What about Idaho?
Idaho, yeah. Yeah, Idaho should be in. I forgot. Yeah, the Idaho's a lock. So let's go back and put them in. So, yeah, so now you're down to 1.
Are the Grizzlies in?
Did I not put them in? Okay, let's back up. All right, okay, let's back up then. So now it really complicates it. I thought I'd put them in. So Montana and
I need to write this down.
Yeah, I did this quick on the fly. So
yeah.
So all that stuff we just said the last 3 or 4 minutes, scratch it. All right, let's go back. All right, 10 auto bids. We talked about them. Now, you got Rhode Island, South Dakota State, USD, Tarleton, Montana, Idaho. That's 6. All right, so that's 16.
Montana's probably going to lose this weekend, but they're still in, you think?
Yeah, they're in. They're going to be in. It's Montana. They're not. I mean, they're going to host, and NCAA is going to want that host money. Trust me.
Yeah.
Stony Brook's probably in. New Hampshire went in.
Okay, that's 18.
17, 18, 19 Illinois State, 20 Eastern Kentucky, 21 William and Mary, 22 Tennessee Martin. So now it's going to be 2 of that remaining Southern Utah, Southeastern, Northern Arizona, Western Carolina, Chattanooga, and there may be somebody else in there that I'm leaving off the bubble. But that's kind of how it looks right now. So you're going to need
New Hampshire on the bubble, or you have them in?
I got them in.
Okay.
Yeah, so I got them in with a win. They're in that win and in setup.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what it looks like. And I don't have UCA in there. I don't have ETSU in there. There are a couple of others. Stephen F. Austin could be in that mix. I mean, because you just don't know how they're going to view it. I mean, they could be looking at it going, you know what? I don't think if Villanova loses, I'm just using that as an example. I'm not saying they would be out, I have them in, but let's say Illinois State loses. Let's say New Hampshire loses. Let's say Eastern Kentucky loses. Let's say William and Mary loses. Now, some of those could lose and still get in because somebody else may lose. You know what I mean? But you have all those schools lose, and then you have some of these other teams elevate and win. What if SFA beats Abilene, who's an auto bid winner? Right, they're gonna finish with 7 wins.
But
although they have a non-D1,
win,
which is going to hurt them. But
they're probably out.
There is no criteria that says you have to have 7. I think 6 is the danger point. You have to have at least 6. 7 is not very many people have made it below 7. I think Illinois State is the example. I think Iowa State, Northern Iowa may have gotten in with 6 wins.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, they did.
But it's going to be a Missouri Valley school. It's not going to be a Southland school or
right.
A school that doesn't have as big a profile as a Valley or a Big Sky or a Columbia.
Is Idaho State out, Mark, with their losses?
Yeah, they're out. They're out. Matter of fact, they play Idaho this week. They could get to 500. If they beat Idaho this week. Now, if they beat Idaho, you got to start looking at Idaho. Although I think Idaho's done enough on their resume to get in regardless. But if Idaho State wins, then that would get Northern Arizona. That would be a 500 team for Northern Arizona because they did beat Idaho State. But I don't think there's any chance they can beat Idaho.
Well, it's going to be a nail biter. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I think that Southeastern is in that. I think there's about 5 teams battling for 2 spots.
Yeah, and look, we say that we don't know.
We don't know.
They stack up in the pecking order. We're just talking about based on how many wins does this school have versus this school. How many are Division I? We haven't. We may be in that. We may be in that. We may in the community size. If we win, they might lock us. We don't know. We could be 21, 22, 23 in the committee size right now if we win. We may not even be in the mix at all. They may go.
I doubt that. I see your point, but I doubt.
I doubt that too. But what I'm saying is,
we could be 28 right now, 27. They said, "Hey, you need about 3-4 teams to lose to get in."
Correct. Or
so we have no clue.
Or they could have us over some teams that have another win than we do.
Yeah,
they could say, "No, what we've done is a little bit more impressive than what some of these others have done against a softer schedule." Now, you get the other thing is how do the computers see? And I haven't really looked at the Massey and all the Sagarin that a lot of these gurus look at. They just look at these computer and it's like it's the gospel, and we all know that those things are what they are. But the committee does look at those, and they look and see how the computers see it because it's considered an objective look at what you've done. But a lot of times it's the information you put in, and there's a bias, obviously, always against the Southland. There always has been. There's a bias when the season starts. We always start off low because of where we've been in the past.
And here's another thing to think about, Mark. I talk about there's no great win. If SFA loses to Abilene this coming weekend, and Lamar was to lose to McNeese, you have no win against a team with a winning record.
Correct. But again, compared to a Northern Arizona.
Oh, no, I know. I'm just saying
but you have to look at that. We would have 2 wins versus 2 500 teams, and then we would beat SFA with their quarterback. You do have to look at that. I mean, and plus we would have 2 narrow losses in the last drive of the game to, 2 teams are going to be in the top 15 or top 10,
Real quickly, Mark, if it plays out and Lions get in at like 23, 24 spot, regionally, what landing grounds could you see the Lions traveling to?
I mean, that's hard to say. I mean, I would almost venture to say there's no chance of us hosting a playoff game. I think that's out the window because I think, for better or worse, your top 8 are pretty set. It's going to be Montana State, North Dakota State, South Dakota, UIW probably will host, probably Rhode Island, and then maybe Idaho. Looks like they'll host, and then it's going to depend on how some things shake out, who the other one is, and then your Montana's. Richmond will host. There'll be another one, but then your Montana's, your Villanova, those type teams, Stony Brook, Illinois State, Idaho will probably be a seed, a top 8. I'm talking about from 9 to 16. I think those seeds will Tarleton. Those teams will Abilene Christian will host. So they'll be 9 to 16. So basically 17 to 24 are going to travel to 9 through 16. And we would be in that travel mode, most likely. And of course, now because regionalization's out the window and there's really nowhere we can bus to. So it's going to be a flight regardless. So it's not necessarily going to be, okay, you got to go to Abilene automatically. I don't know if that's the case. I mean, they could, they're going to start looking at it and they're going to ship, try to balance out brackets and avoid rematches and, stuff like that. So I could not begin to tell you where we could possibly land. It could be anywhere. I mean, it could be SEMO. I could see that being a possibility if they're not a top 8, because that is it's more than it's a plane trip based on the mileage, but it's 500 miles, give or take. It's a little bit more than that maybe. So that's a drivable trip for your fan base. I think that's part of the things you have to look at. It's closer than Abilene. I don't know. I have no idea. But
I don't even know where do you fly into to go SEMO?
No airport in Cape Girardeau. Probably
I looked it up yesterday.
Well, there's not. But you might be able to fly charter possibly.
Maybe.
And then, if not there, it'd either be Memphis or St. Louis.
That's a long way.
It is, but I mean, there's got to be an airport there you can get a charter plane in. I mean, because they got to fly out somewhere. But that's a good question. But again, I don't know if UT Martin gets in and we get in. That's another possibility. I mean, is
that a bus trip?
A little bit more than a bus trip. I think 400 is a cutoff. That's 430, I think, somewhere around.
Wow.
Yeah, because I've made that trip many times over the years.
Yeah,
but
if you go to Abilene, you probably link up with UIW again in the second round.
You could. I mean, that's possible. I mean, I would think, hopefully, and again, I don't know this. I would hope the committee would try to steer away from that if they don't have to. Again, because you're putting schools on planes anyway. I mean, they're not going to be bus trips. So
Abilene would probably be a bus trip to San Antonio.
Yeah, they would be. We wouldn't be. Right. You probably.
That's what I'm saying. I think if Abilene's going to host,
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Their opponent probably gets linked to UIW.
No, I get that. It's probably it's easy. I mean, that's an easy one. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say where we could go, and it's hard to say if we'll get in. But I do think there's a chance we can get in. I think there's a lot to play for. It's not just a River Bell. I mean, we'll talk about that here in a second. But as far as the game itself, but It's exciting. It really is, because this is probably the most unique year we've had as far as where we sit. Now, maybe in our eyes, we feel like it's the same as 2016, because I think going into that weekend, we felt like a lot of things happened in our favor, if you remember.
Yeah, no, that's
We're looking at every loss, every team loss that we needed to lose. And it still wasn't enough to get us in the first 4 out. So that's the thing. It gives you a little bit of pause about this year because I know how that year went. But I do think we are in much better shape just based on our strength of schedule, how the season's played out, based on how everybody else is in the country. We are in better shape.
If we win and don't get in, we're definitely the last 4 out in this go around, which we weren't in 16. So that just shows we're in a different spot.
Yeah, I would think we would be in the first 4 out. But that's not. I mean, your first 4 out, you're out. That's not a consolation you really want to be proud of. You want to get in. If you don't get in.
I got a question for you, Mark. You talked about the seeding of teams 9 through 16, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? No, 9 through 17, right?
Yeah, 9 through 17, right.
Do you link
eight schools?
Is that all regional from there, or do they say, well, Southeastern was our 24th team in, they're going to go straight to number 9?
I saw an interview with the committee chair a few weeks back, and basically he kind of split the baby. They talked about how regionalization was not going to be a major factor anymore, but it still was going to play some effect. So I think they're going to, if we'll put it like this, I think they want to get the best teams seeded 1 through 8. They want to get the next best team seeded 9 through 16. Then from there, they'll regionalize it a little bit if they can save some money, because why wouldn't you?
Because my thought is if we're going to have to fly anyway, they're going to want to if they're trying to seed these top 8, these middle 8 teams, giving them a reward for where they are instead of the bid process. Right. I feel like they're also going to reward them, giving them a game that would be on paper a higher seed. I'm not on the committee. That's kind of my guess and my feel of how they're doing.
Well, I mean, here's
24 may be connected to 9. You never know.
What I hope doesn't happen. What I hope doesn't happen is they put, whether it's us or anybody else, I hope they don't put a team in as the last team in just to make it regionally convenient. In other words, you're going to have a tiebreaker somehow. You're going to have all the data, and they're going to watch all the games and look at all the schedules against each other.
Let's be honest here. We're really not regionally convenient, and there's teams in the bubble that would be.
Correct. Exactly. But whether it would be us in our favor or not, you hope that isn't a tiebreaker. I mean, it could be. I mean, because you have to break a tie somehow. But you would hope it would be on the merit, and it wouldn't be because, this team just fits better. Well, I mean, we talked about New Hampshire. Famously or infamously, whatever, New Hampshire has gotten in the playoffs year after year after year, and people said, no way they're getting in. No chance. And somehow they ended up in the playoffs because when you look at it at the end of the day, you had to have some geographical balance. And them being in made it convenient to send somebody there, them somewhere, and save a little money, and you could use that as a tiebreaker. So to me, that's, I just hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Because the NCAA is looking at it, NCAA is going to be like, just in their respective, like, okay, Southeastern is going to go to SEMO. Let's say I don't know, I'll have to do more research, but maybe there isn't an airport. Maybe Memphis is the closest airport. And they're going to be like, we got to fly Southeastern to Memphis to bus 2 hours north to Cape Girardeau. Like,
I mean, it could be a factor. Well, if they could bus somebody there, there's I got to look at it, see who's in, who's out, but we have no idea yet. I mean, you got Illinois State, but they'll host. That's the other thing. Before when it was just bids, whoever had the best bids, they could look at, okay, this team bid, this team bid, this team bid. Now we can just match it up. You weren't seeding 9 through 16.
Yeah.
Nobody knew who was 9th, who was 10th. So you could do whatever you wanted to make it work. Now, when you got that 9 through 16 seeded, you take away some of those geographical matchups. right?
Right.
Not just round, possibly because basically it's seeded how it's seeded. Now, could they manipulate the seed to keep it geographically balanced? Yeah, they could, but hopefully that doesn't happen either. Hopefully it's on the merit of one loss and where they rank and that sort of thing in the committee's eyes, which again, I have no inside.
No, you have no clue.
No clue.
I think Sam Herder's right. And I saw on Twitter Sam Herder is going to write a bubble story to come out tomorrow. Don't quote me on that, but you can go on Twitter, X, whatever you call it. He tweeted about that. He's got a bubble article coming out, so that'll be interesting with where he kind of puts us and everybody else going into the final week of the season.
Now, I did see Craig Haley's whatever he put out last night after all the games were over. He doesn't even have us anywhere mentioned at all, like not even first four out or anything. So Craig Haley either typed his story quickly and forgot about us, or he just doesn't think very highly of us for whatever reason. But he didn't have us in or even close. Which
I think Aaron Allen Waddell's talked about this on a couple of good occasions. I think the Thursday night game when it comes to playoffs has helped us in the past. I think that people, FCS fans all around the country, they like to watch FCS football. They're not watching the NFL on Thursday nights. They're not watching other FBS games. People have tuned
16.
Huh?
Didn't help us in 16.
No, I know, but I think it really it said a lot. It said a lot in 19. I think people talked about how great the game was in 21, watching Cole play and stuff like that. So, a good showing against Nichols would also be that last taste in the mouth where a lot of people just watched our game.
Well, that's a good segue into Nichols and the River Bell Classic, which is a classic. I think everybody would agree with that. It's one of the best rivalries in the South. And of course, they're coming off a tough loss. Southeastern had an open date, a much-needed bye after 11 straight weeks. And, Nicholls State's had a tough year. They've had some tough losses and had some injuries like everybody. Went into Lamar, lost a tough one, 24-7. But guess what? They're still Nicholls. And they're tough against the run. They're blue-collar. They're gritty. They don't like the Lions, and they're at home. And they're going to give Southeastern their very best shot, just like Southeastern gave them Southeastern's best shot last year. Came up short, 21-16, but, it was a great ball game. And even in all the years that we've played Nicholls State in this classic, going back to 10, 12 years even, the crowds are always packed. The games are always, they're always physical. They've gotten us a couple of times. We've gotten them a couple of times where the scores, I think the one year they beat us 44-0 in 2018, I guess it was. And I know we went down there and clinched the conference championship in 2014. We blew them out and got them there 2 years ago. But otherwise, these
road team has done well in this series of the way. Yeah,
the road team has done well. So, I don't think that's going to matter. I think where this game's played doesn't matter because our fans are going to be there. Their fans are going to be there. It's going to be a great environment. It doesn't matter. It's, it's just who's getting the game, basically, what color uniforms you wear. Because they've won here, we've won there. But I do know it's going to be a physical game. It's probably a good matchup for them in terms of how we play because Nicholls is really good against the run. They get after the passer. We've got some injuries on the offensive line. Hopefully get some guys back. But, you do worry about that matchup a little bit. They've been offensively challenged. They've had some injuries at running back, and they've struggled scoring points. So I think if you're just analyzing this game, you're looking at going, okay, this is probably going to be a 17-14 game or a 14-13 type game. And we said the same thing at Lamar, if you remember, and that game turned out to be 30-27 in overtime. So go figure on that. But I do know
and they're well coached.
Yeah, and they're very well coached. And so anybody that's just expecting us to go in there and blow them out, I don't know if that's realistic to have that expectation going in, because let's face it, they're 4-6. We're 6-5, or they're 5-6, wherever they are. 4-7, right? I mean, it's one or two games, right there. I mean, it's flipping a game here and there. So, still going to be a pretty evenly matched game, and I think it's going to be everything the River Bell's cracked up to be.
Absolutely, I think that it's always a pleasure going down to Thibodaux. I always, I'm a big fan of this. I love driving down there in the fall. I always have. It's just a pretty drive in my book. In the fall time of year. And I enjoy watching games in Guidry Stadium. I enjoy the patronage of the rivalry and what it's become. It's good to have a rival. I think it helps universities in general. I've always thought LSU kind of, LSU, Arkansas, trying to think of a couple others maybe that just kind of are always just kind of floating around at the end of the year. They didn't have that signature game, where they're, LSU, I just talking about them, like they try to make rivalry with A&M, Ole Miss, Alabama, but those schools all have their other in-state rivals. So,
it's not a lot different than really how, us and McNeese were kind of a rivalry there for a while, just because. But
this is that
us and McNeese isn't this. This is throw the records out the book. It doesn't matter who's good, who's bad, who's playing well, who's not. It's Nichols and Southeastern, and everybody's 0-0, and it's going to be a slugfest.
Absolutely.
It's going to be cousin, brothers.
And the fans have gotten into it a lot on social media and stuff over the last few years. So it's going to be a great game. Lions are going to have to go play well. You hope that they needed the bye week, but you hope that didn't slow their momentum that they had gathered over the last 5 or 6 weeks. But I doubt that's the case.
Yeah, that doesn't concern me. Well, for one reason, it's a kind of a quicker turnaround. I mean, you get those you're bumped up 2 days. So you get the open date, but it's really not like an open day. It's just like having a couple extra days. You know what I mean? It's not like you're going a full week.
Yeah.
So, again, you get
their coaches got back late last night. They probably had to practice today. And they only got 3 real days to get ready for this game.
Right. We know who we're playing. So it's not like you're waiting on the playoffs. So, I think, we talk about the Thursday Nichols Southeastern game and, wish this game could be on Saturday. And a lot of folks think that and think we get bigger crowds and that sort of thing. But it's become a Thursday tradition. Now, it's not a great thing when we got to play on Saturday and turn around and play on Thursday. I mean, but we've done it before and we've won games like that before. But having that open date or that bye right before, especially coming off 11 straight games, we had to have one. We needed it. So if we can, somehow go into Thibodaux next week or Thursday night and pull out a W and then find a way to sneak into playoffs, now you got a couple of extra days going into your first round playoff game. So, and coming off an open date before that. So you go in hopefully as fresh as you could possibly be given where you are at this point here through 12.
Well, Mark, great job. Yeah, Mark, great job today. We will see what happens Thursday night. We'll come on next week, Sunday or Monday, either talking about how it wrapped up and or talking about previewing a playoff game. So we hope for that. We'll see what happens, but you got to go win Thursday night or it's all the conversations for nothing.
That's right. Right. Excuse me.
He's Mark Willoughby. I'm Robbie Rhodes. We'll talk to you next time on the Southeastern Sports Network podcast.
Peace.